In prison, I lived with a serial killer for 6 months before I ever knew he was a serial killer. So back in 2004, I was at Nottoway Correctional Center, and I'd gotten a job in the woodshop. So they were moving me to the woodshop workers pod. Remember, they popped the door to the cell for me to go in, and there was this little old man sitting in front of his TV drinking coffee, and I was like, bet, like, this is a roommate I can deal with. He's not young and crazy. He's not going to be loud. Like, and it worked out great. Sometimes he worked night shift, and I worked day shift, so I got the cell to myself. He was quiet. We had good conversations. We watched Jeopardy. I really liked the guy. He even taught me how to shave, because when I first got locked up, I couldn't grow a beard, so I never learned. And I felt so bad for him because he never got mail and never, talked on the phone, that I asked my stepmom if she would write him, because she had lived in Japan and he had been stationed in Japan. And then my stepmom comes for a visit, and she's like, Jesse, your roommate's a serial killer. And I was like, oh, okay. So she tells me this whole story, and I go back and I have to have this conversation. Like, Greg, remember how I said I was going to try to get my stepmom to write you? Well, she doesn't really feel comfortable. And he says, yeah, you did your homework. And he laughed and scared the shit out of me. Greg was my prison roommate who was connected to a dozen murders across the country, but I didn't know that at first. So finding out one day that I was living with a serial killer was uncomfortable, and it didn't really mesh with the things I knew about him. He'd been a decorated officer in Vietnam, he'd served 3 tours, and he used to recite the names of every soldier he had lost. The man was helping me work on my vocabulary. We used to play Jeopardy at night. Hell, he's the one who taught me how to shave because I hadn't been able to grow a beard before prison. He was really where I started to understand that no one is just one thing.